This is an app that I strongly recommend, especially if you're going through beginning Greek. This app will really change the game. If you are unable to instantly identify a word in the Greek New Testament, there are two reasons why that is probably so. In this video, we're going to touch on both of those reasons, but we're going to really major on a tool that is incredibly helpful for helping you really learn to master and identify verbs and nouns in the Greek New Testament instantly. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Darryl Burling from Biblical Mastery Academy, and I help people just like you master the tools, habits, and systems that will help you to master the Greek of the New Testament so you can read it fluently from beginning to end without depending on tools. If that's interesting, go check out our website, bma.to/get started to get underway with some basics of what it really looks like to learn some Greek. So look forward to helping you and serving you there. Let's talk about those two reasons why you probably can't instantly identify any word you find in the New Testament and understand what it means right away. And some of this will be no surprise to most of you. But the first reason is you have to know your vocabulary. There are a number of components to any given word, and the most important component to any word is the lexical form, or the root, if you like, the lexeme, the meaning of the word. And this is the piece of the word that conveys what we would sort of have as like the meaning, the gloss, if you like. Not that it is a gloss is just a representation of the meaning in a target language. So the meaning of the word is based in this root form, which then takes on in some cases, a slightly different form in, say, the present tense, particularly in the Greek New Testament. And so that means then you need to be able to identify the stem, which then helps you to identify the root. And once you understand the root and you understand the stem, then instantly you should be able to identify the basic kind of meaning behind that verb. So that's a critical piece you need to know. And if you are struggling through a reader's edition or something like that, the reason you need a reader's edition is because your vocabulary is so small, and we need to increase our vocabulary. And my recommendation is to increase it not only to know all the words in the Greek New Testament, but go beyond that and learn words that are in the Septuagint and the Apostolic Fathers as well. Because again, these are just going to give you greater familiarity with more Greek texts as you go through. So this is just going to vastly increase your ability to read. So that's the first reason you can't instantly identify a word. You just don't know the vocabulary, and so you just can't identify it. And there's no amount of tools or technology or anything that's going to help you get around that. If you don't know the word, you're just going to have to look it up. Unless, of course, you go buy our Greek vocab pack, which provides you with the vocabulary for every word in the Greek New Testament, ordered from the easiest books to the hardest books, so that you can learn a piece of, set of vocabulary and then read a piece of the text of the New Testament that has that vocabulary in it, so you can learn it really well that way. If you're interested in doing that, no pressure, but bma.to/vocab pack to go grab a copy of that today. So vocab is part one, but the second part is by some arguments the more challenging. I mean, I think people get lazy with both these elements and they just give up on vocabulary, but they sort of get to this point where they're actually okay with the parsing. But how do you get to be really good with the parsing? And that's really what I want to spend the bulk of this video talking about. How you can go from knowing the vocabulary, or some vocabulary at least, to then being able to identify any form of those vocabulary words that you've learned. That's where the tool we're talking about today really helps. But before I talk about any technological tools, let's talk about how I recommend you do this more broadly. Now, when I was learning Biblical Greek, like everybody else at the time, had to figure out, well, how do you deal with this? How do you actually learn the forms that you're going to encounter in the Greek New Testament? And I was learned under Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek, which I found really quite helpful in many, many ways. And we've taken some of the concepts of that and we use that in our own Beginning Greek course today, Beginning Greek in Small Steps, with some modifications along the way. And so this is where we give you a paradigm chart that actually gives you the basic components of all the different Greek verbs or nouns that you're going to find in the Greek New Testament. And these forms then provide a foundation to be able to identify, if you know a root or a lexeme, then you'll be able to identify the forms of this lexeme and how those forms actually modify the meaning of that particular word. And so you need to know these forms and the way these forms work. Now, I know that some of you are sitting there going, whoever wants to learn paradigms? Nobody wants to learn paradigms, and I get that. But let me just give one comment in my defense of this, because I actually still think that even though this is one of those tasks that you feel like a 5-year-old and it really sucks to feel like a 5-year-old while you're a 30, whatever it is, or 40-year-old, or however old you are, learning biblical Greek for the first time and you're faced with paradigms, there is actually value to doing this, because if you learn those paradigm charts, you actually put all of that paradigm information into your long-term memory, which then makes it much easier to recall. And this is where writing those paradigms out from scratch over and over can be really helpful. And as you do that, you want to be sounding out what you're writing. You're seeing it because you're seeing it on the text as it comes together. You're using your body to learn, and that helps as well. And as you hear it, you're actually hearing the audible side of things as well. So all of those senses really help to engage you to learn that process. But having said that, I know some of you will never do that regardless of how much I recommend it. And one of the things we've started doing in Beginning Greek in Small Steps is actually providing vocab flashcards, if you like, that are focused on just those forms. So you actually don't need to memorize the whole paradigm. You actually just get, here's the form, identify that form for me, and then you should be able to do that pretty easily as well. So we're actually providing you with additional information to do that. But there is another step that even if you do learn those paradigms, if you like, and you do learn those paradigm cards, there's still this extra step of putting it on those words that you've learned, the vocabulary you've learned that aren't part of that paradigm. How do you do that? And that's what I kind of refer to in a sense as the last mile. If you're familiar with technology, you know, you can put this cabling infrastructure throughout the country, but then the last mile is how do you connect that up to each house so that they have internet access, so to speak. So the last mile, if you like, when it comes to parsing, is actually to take those paradigm ideas and connect them to the lexical forms that you're learning as part of your vocabulary. How do you do that? Well, that's where the tool we're talking about today comes in really handy. So that's ParseGreek, which has been around for nearly 15 years now. It's been around for a long time, and Danny Zacharias, the developer of it, has done a great job of continuing to innovate and update it. And today it's still my recommended go-to app for parsing practice. And here's the reason why. One reason is that it gives you quite a bit of flexibility, and particularly when you're in the beginning Greek phase. And that's where I think this is the most powerful as a tool. You can actually go into it and select a grammar that you're working through and then tell it what lesson in that grammar you're up to, and then practice just the concepts within that lesson. And this is super powerful because now you're actually able just to sort of practice the concepts for this lesson with the vocabulary that goes with that lesson, and you're able to master that. And that's what I recommend you do. And in terms of the grammars that it's got available to it, it's got Mounts, it's got Black, it's got Beginning with New Testament Greek by Merkel and Plummer. It's got a whole pile of different grammars available in it. And now it also includes Beginning Greek in Small Steps, our own one as well. If you're a BMA Mastery member and you're going through Beginning Greek, then you can actually use ParseGreek now to work through our Beginning Greek course and grammar as part of Beginning Greek and get that last mile, if you like, in as part of your course loading. So this is really exciting for me personally, and it's also exciting for us as well as an organization and for our members too. So let's talk about how to actually use this app. So if we open it up here and we start on the launch page, which we normally see, you can see there that my most recent exercises, if you like, are at the top. And then underneath we have all the different options that are available to us that we can just scroll through and use there. So in this case, what we're going to do, and you can see at the top, we've got by textbook or by frequency or sets. And if you're learning vocabulary by frequency, you can connect that with the frequency option here and practice parsing the words that you're learning. Now, in this case, we're going to work by textbook. So I'm going to tap on by textbook. Then you choose the textbook. Of course, I'm going to choose Beginning Greek in Small Steps. And then you have two options. You can either choose to learn by vocabulary, or you can choose to go through by grammar. So this would give me, let's say if I just choose the first module here, it would now give me the different forms of the words included in that module that are found in the Greek New Testament broadly. But if I click over on grammar, I can constrain that to just the ones I find in module 2. Now there's no grammar in module 1, hence there's no option for module 1. And just for what it's worth here in Beginning Greek in Small Steps, the two numbers there, 2.4, 2.6, 3.8, that is module and then lesson. So module 2, lesson 4, module 3, lesson 8, and so on. I would like to see that change just so that it's the lesson number and not the module, and so look for a change for that in the future. But nonetheless, that's how it works there. So if we go back to vocabulary and we choose modules 1 and 2, and I choose module 2, lesson 4, and module 2, lesson 6, well, that now gives me a number of concepts to work on. So now having chosen that, I'm going to choose next, and it gives you some settings to work against. Now, we're not going to change any of these here, except for this one here. Answer must include lexical form. Now, I normally would recommend you turn that off. I'll show you why. Let's just say we'll turn it on for the moment, and we'll go next. And you can see here, okay, now we've got this word here, and it's in the accusative, it's masculine, and it's a singular word. And then it's going to ask you to choose the lexical form. And this is where, and so you can see it's gone through and do that. Now, I think that's just a little bit too time consuming, and so I would prefer not to have that. So I would turn that off, and then you can find that you can actually flip through this a whole lot quicker. So this would be an accusative, masculine, plural, done. That's much faster. And for the most part, when you see the word, if you've learnt the vocabulary, you don't need to remind yourself of what the vocabulary is. It's really obvious. And so therefore, just work on the parsing with this app. Now, if you do get one wrong, I'll show you what you should do. Let's just call this a nominative, masculine, singular, and we get it wrong. My recommendation here is you use that redo button down the bottom to go back and do it all over again. And that will help you to actually internalize the correct answers when you do get it wrong. So that's my recommendation. Now, you can see here that I've got 44 words remaining in the top left corner there, so I can just keep on going through all of this. And again, it's only showing me the words for the vocabulary that I've selected. So these are the words that I've actually learned that I've chosen back here. See, here's how I recommend you actually do this. My recommendation is that you work on this. So let's just say we're in module 3, where we learn the verb. My recommendation is choose the vocabulary for the module you're working on, and then choose just the lesson number that you're working on and work on just those options. And again, turn off that and then carry on. In this case, it's only going to be aorist. So this is just talking about the aorist active verb forms. And then it's in the indicative, second person singular. And so just go through and choose those to practice just this option, the options that you've learned in this lesson. Once you've done that for a bit and you're feeling pretty confident with that, then that's when you want to go back and then add previous things in as well, or, you know, so that now you can actually mix up the things that you're looking at a little bit more. And this will then allow you to have a few additional choices to choose from. You're not just looking at the same forms, and you're actually starting to interact with the text as you're going to find it in all sorts of random order in the New Testament. So that's my recommendation for how to use this. And my recommendation, how would you do this? So my goal here is not to have you sort of spend hours and hours a day on this. You really don't need to. Once you start to see the patterns, you will be quite okay just sort of reinforcing those patterns on a daily basis, which means that really all you need to do is spend maybe 5 minutes a day, or 10 if you're like a stickler, just working through the options that it gives you. You don't even have to go through the full set. You can restrict it to say just 10 or 20 words, whatever you feel appropriate to. But my recommendation is just actually give yourself a timer and just work to that time. 5 minutes every day should be enough to really reinforce the lessons you're working through. And then if you go back and review previous things, really reinforce all the ones you've previously learned as well, which will then mean that you will instantly be able to identify all the forms of the words that you have memorized the vocabulary for when you look at them in the Greek New Testament. And that's how you get to that point where you can instantly identify any word in the Greek New Testament. You learn the vocabulary and you practice these parsing exercises so that you can instantly see how the parts, the morphology, is assembled. And of course, having a grammar to work through that explains all that morphology is really what you want to sort of tie it all together. So that's ParseGreek, and this is an app that I strongly recommend, especially if you're going through beginning Greek. This app will really change the game. So go and grab a copy of ParseGreek, bma.to/ParseGreek, and you can grab a copy for yourself. I should mention that the features that I've just shown you are as in the latest version, which is only available right now for iOS. There's no updated version for Android yet. That will be coming in December this year, but at the moment, the features that I've just been through, or the form that I've just shown you, is all in iOS only, so just be aware of that. The one thing I think is still kind of a bit of a shortfall, if you like, in ParseGreek at least I think this is still a problem, is that it only includes words that occur in the Greek New Testament. So if the word doesn't occur in the Greek New Testament, it has no knowledge of. This becomes a problem when you look at a noun, for instance, that could be a nominative or accusative plural, where the form is the same in both cases. But let's say that in the New Testament, there's only the nominative form and there's no accusative form. And that means then, but because there's no accusative, it doesn't know that the accusative is even an option. And so it forces you to actually mark that form as a nominative, where it could be nominative or accusative. And I think this is one of those things that I would love to see changed over time, but I'm not the developer, but it's still one of those things I think is really, really helpful. So I still recommend this app regardless. This is a very minor thing. The app is well worth having regardless of that. But just be aware that if it marks it incorrect and you're like, but no, it could be an accusative or a nominative or accusative, then that might be the reason why one of those forms may not occur in the Greek New Testament. Finally, if you've got this far in the video and you use ParseGreek and you've got some tips for how to use it, leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you there. Or if you use a different app to practice these same concepts, this parsing idea, then let us know in the comments below which one you use. I'd love to hear from you there as well. If you got this far in the video, leave me a detective emoji, and you might need to do a quick search in your emoji library to find a detective emoji. But go ahead and do that and leave it in the comment section below. And I look forward to serving you again in the next video. And until then, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery. See you in the next one.